Right, what I want to do now is introduce you to the idea that controllers, such as this little circle on the nose here, can also manipulate parts of the user interface to make the user interface a bit more friendly. So for example, if I grab this is doing all the nose morphs, as you can see on the main model there. But notice also what's happening to the user interface. I might even zoom in on that a little bit. So as I move in and out, the user interface is scaling in proportion as well, to give you a kind of graphical representation. As I move up and down, it also moves up and down as well. I've actually made it move up a different amount to the main controller, just so you can tell if the nose is wrinkled at a glance. And you can see that that's quite a useful feature to incorporate onto your user interface. And we're going to develop that idea in this part of the tutorial. So we're going to look at the lips. The top part of the lip is going to curl the lip open, and then if I push it down, it's going to thin the lip down. And I've got this controller on each lip here. In the user interface, as it curls the lip open, I want it to lift up this lip shape so you can see that the mouth is open slightly. And as I push it down to the bottom, I want it to thin down that lip shape to give you a visual representation of it. So it's going to manipulate, as well as manipulating the morph targets over here, it's going to change the Y position and the Y scale of this particular shape. This one at the side here, I'm going to go up and down to change the up and down curvature on the lips. It's also going to go out and in to widen or purse the lips. And as it does that, I want it to scale these lip shapes in the X direction, so again you get a visual representation of the shape of the mouth. So I've got the issue here, if I look in the dope sheet, that at the moment it only has one scale controller for this lip shape. What I'm going to do is, because I'm scaling it in different directions, I'm actually going to change that scale controller by choosing assign controller there. I'm going to change it to scale X, Y, Z, so it's not just one animation track. The X, Y, and Z are all independent, and that means that when I'm using Reaction Manager, I can control the Y scale by this object and the X scale by this object, because they're independent tracks. So let's have a look at this in operation. It's pretty simple to set up, same as normal. So I'll just do add master, select it, choose position, Y position, just do show selected so we don't have all the other stuff on there. And then add the slaves. The first slaves are going to be the morph targets. And we've got lip top curl, and add in the next slave is going to be lip top thin. The other slaves though are going to be the Y scale of this and the Y position of this. So add another slave, choose the lip shape, transform position, Y position, and then add another slave and choose the lip shape again, transform scale, Y scale. And then it's just a case of setting it up in the same way. So I'll move that up. I will go to the morph targets, top curl, there we go. Curl that up, and then I will come to here and I will move this up to there to give a visual representation that the mouth is open, create a state. Then I'll move them back to the previous position. I haven't actually got a freeze transform on this lip, so I just need the align tool there to put it back to its old position. Put that down to the bottom, turn curl off and turn thin on to thin out the top lip. And then choose the lip shape and scale it down in the Y direction like so. Create another state. Turn create mode off, and now if I move this up and down, you can see the mouth goes up when the top lip opens, and as the top lip thins, the lip shape thins as well. You get a nice visual representation of it all. Now I'm not going to do the bottom lip control until later on for reasons that will become obvious later. I'm going to concentrate on the side corner ones here now. I've already put in movements to make them go up and down and control the turn up and turn down of the mouth corners, which I'm not entirely happy with, but I'll have to live with them for now. And now I'm going to control the in and out movement, which is going to control the widening and pursing of the lips. It's also going to help the lip shape get wider and narrower. I'll just zoom in on that for now. Now the problem I have with this is if I move this in like so and I scale the lip in, it's also going to scale it in from this end, which is not what I want because I want to be able to move these independently. So as I scale it in, I'm also going to want to move it to the right a little bit so that it stays connected at this end and this end, so it's going to be a kind of visual thing. And so I also need to have the X movement of this as a slave so I can do that. But of course this one to move independently also needs to control the X scale and the X movement in the same way, and that means that we need a list controller in order to enable two masters to control the same animation track. So I'm just going to go to the dope sheet and under X scale here I'm going to right click on it, choose assign controller, and Bezier float is the default. I'm going to choose a float list to enable us to put more than one track in there. It's exactly the same procedure that happens when we freeze transforms. So now I've got my X scale list in there. If I expand that out, you can see I've got a Bezier float, which is actually the one that was already there previously. And I've also got available, and I'm going to assign a controller to available and put in another Bezier float. So now under X scale I've got two possible control values that I can use to manipulate that. I need to do the same with X position so that both control objects can move it. Float list and go in there and add a new Bezier float to that as well. So now I've got the ability to do that. I'm just going to set this reaction manager up in the normal way, add in transform position X position, show selected, and then add in slaves. So first slave is going to be the morph targets, which is going to be lips are wide and lips are purse. Then I'm also going to add in one of the X positions and one of the X scales from the lip shape. First one. I'll choose the second one next time. And add slave there. Go transform scale, X scale, and choose the first one again. Add in new slave for the bottom lip. Position, and I've already previously set up the list controllers on this one as well, and I need the scale for that as well, the bottom lip. Transform scale, X scale, and the first one. So now I've got the whole thing set up. Let's go into create mode and move it out. Change lips widen to, oh, wrong side. Lips, change lips right wide to 100 to move it out like so, and then come in and I'm just going to zoom in on these so visually and scale this up like that and move it across like that. Of course it's not moving because I still have link info, I still have a lock in the X direction. Silly old me, let's just turn the locks off there for both of those. Go back to here and position it visually the right length and the right position to go between those 2 points. Same on the bottom lip. And create a state. Then we go to move this all the way in. We go back to our model and we turn off lips right wide and turn on lips right purse to push it in. And then we come back to our lips, just zoom back in on those, and again we scale them down and move them into position like so. And create a new state. Now we turn create mode off and go back to our previous view. Let's move this control left and right, and you can see it works the morph targets and it stretches the GUI all together. Now before we set up the other corner, we need to change the active controller within that list controller. So just go back to the dope sheet and double click on X position and you can see float reaction is currently highlighted with a little arrow there. So just double click on Bezier float, which is the one we haven't used yet, to set that as the active controller. Do it on the scale as well, and then on the bottom lip. And that just means that now when we manipulate the gizmo, we're manipulating the correct animation track. Otherwise we'll be trying to manipulate the one that's already set up and it just won't move. So set this one up in exactly the same way as that side now, but using the second one in the list. And I won't put you through watching all that. We'll come back in a second and look at the jaw. Right, moving the jaw up and down is going to open and close the mouth, which means that it's going to activate the jaw open morph target that we created right at the beginning of this VTM. It's also going to have to rotate the jawbone open and closed to enable the teeth that are inside here to be in the correct position. And it's also going to have to do one other thing as well. This lip shape here at the moment doesn't move. And the reason it doesn't move is because in its Y direction it's got a limited controller, and that has got limits of 0 and 0, so it can't go anywhere. But what I want to do is when the jaw is open like this, I want to change that limit to 3 so that the mouth can go all the way up. And what will happen then is as that mouth goes up, it will turn off the jaw open morph target and turn on jaw open 2, which is the one where the jaw is open and the mouth is shut. So in effect, it'll make a transition between the jaw open and the jaw open with the mouth shut by moving along there. So I'll set that back to 0 for the moment, but when I'm setting up Reaction Manager I want to include that upper limit value as something it can change, so when it's open like that, the upper limit is then 3 and it can go up to the top. So, setting all that up sounds a bit ominous, but it's actually quite easy. Add master, select the jaw, transform position, Y position, there we go. Add in the slaves. First slave as ever is going to be the morph target, which is going to be mouth open, sorry, not jaw open as I previously said. I also need to include the bone, so if I turn on bones and turn off body so we can see it, I'll select this. Now before you can actually wire to anything in a cat rig, you need to make sure that you've got an animation layer here and that you're in animation mode, otherwise you just won't be able to do anything. Oh, and the other thing is, normally when you're animating, the rotate gizmo should be in gimbal mode up here, because gimbal is the true axis of animation, but for some reason I've yet to deduce, actually, when you're using cat rig components, you need to make sure the local gimbal is on. In this case, it doesn't really make any difference, because the Z axis, the one we're interested in, goes both ways. Add in another slave, and add in the jawbone, transform, layer trans, animation layer, rotation, Z rotation. If you haven't got the animation layer set up there, it just won't let you get anywhere near that far. There won't be anything to pick off the list. And the other thing we need to do is we need to change the limit on this lip. So add another slave, choose the lip shape, transform, position, Y position, and then instead of choosing the limited controller like we normally do there, go on to limits and choose upper limit. So now I'm going to unhide my body layer. I'm just going to X-ray it so I can see inside as well. And then I'm going to go into create mode. All the way down. Activate the morph target. Mouth open. Get the jaw and rotate that until it looks right. And then bring this up in the dope sheet and just change the upper limit here from 0 up to 3 and create a new state, and that should be it. So now if I move this jaw up and down, you can see the morph target and the jaw movement work together on the right there, but as we come down to the bottom, this lip is now movable up to the top because I've moved it down 3, but I've also increased its upper limit to 3. And what's even clever about this is because that graph has a nice straight line on it, whatever position that jaw is in, this will only ever go up to that position there. So now we've set the jaw up, we need to set this up to swap between those morph targets. So let's just go back to there and hide the bones again, because we don't need to see them right at the moment. At the moment, if I have the jaws closed, I can't move it anywhere, so I can't actually use it as a master controller. But if I open the jaw, obviously now, because it's got an upper limit, I can move it from there to there, and that will enable me to use it as a master controller. So this now has to switch off mouth open and switch on mouth open too. Now here comes that problem again, because we've already got something controlling mouth open, so we need to put in a list controller on mouth open so that we can have two objects controlling it. The jaw will open and close it, and the lip here needs to turn it off. Let's do that. Select the character and go to the dope sheet, and then expand up modified object morpher. And down here you can see all of the morph targets that we've used, and all the ones that we've already set up have got the reaction controller on there. So what I need to do now is choose mouth open, right click, assign controller, and choose float list. If I expand that up, you can see that my reaction that I've already set up is still in there. I just need to put another Bezier float in the available slot to give me something to play with, and double click on mouth open and just make the Bezier float, the new one, the active one, and then we're able to carry on and make all that work. So now to set up the reaction manager on this bit, just select that, transform position, Y position limited controller, that's the master, and then I'm going to add a slave, mouth open, and you see now this expands out, and I choose Bezier float, and then add in the other one, modified object morpher, and choose mouth open 2. I don't need to change the jaw because the jaw will still be open. So I go into create mode, I move my lip all the way up to the top, I go back to my morph target, I turn mouth open off and mouth open 2 on. Create a state. Turn off create mode, and you'll see now that it transitions from one to the other according to where that lip is, and it will do it at various points. Okay. Right, I also said I was going to leave this one till later, and now I've set it up so you can see the reason why. If I move this up and down, obviously it curls the lip and thins the lip just like we did on the top lip. But notice how it's also moving the lip shape up and down. And that means it needs an extra list controller in there, because we've got a movement up and down that you control. So that when you move the jaw here, you can pick the lip up and move it up and down. But you also need a movement up and down that this controls. Let's just have a look at the dope sheet for that lip. So we're moving in the Y, and here in the Y I've put a list controller on, and you can see in there is the float limit we had originally, and I've also now got a float reaction in there, which obviously was a Bezier float until I set it up with Reaction Manager to be controlled by this. If I expand that Y position here, just remember when you're setting up your Reaction Manager to make the new one, which was Bezier float when I did it, to make that one active, and when you've set up the Reaction Manager, make this one active again to enable you to actually manipulate this as a user. The only other thing that we haven't really looked at is this jaw protrusion, and there's nothing difficult about that. All we're doing is we're looking at the movement of the jaw bone as well as the morph target. So if I move it up and down like so, you can see I've got protrusion forward and backward, and the morph target is activating and the jawbone is also moving forwards. Remember, when we set up those morph targets initially, we moved the jawbone forwards about 1 centimetre, so it's quite easy to set up. And then side to side here, the same applies. The morph target is activated and the jawbone is activated at the same time. The only potential pitfall there really is just making sure that you have your move gizmo in parent space when you set it up, which of course is correct for general animation. No sort of weirdities like you get with the rotation gizmo. Right, the final thing I wanted to talk to you about is how to keep a good eye on this at all times. You'll remember right back at the beginning that we parented everything to this object here. So what I'm going to do is link that to the head bone, which means that whichever direction the head is facing, you can always view it straight on, and you can always have the user interface next to it. So let's just bring back the bones, hide the body just for a second, and then we'll link the GUI to the head bone. We're also going to choose everything in the GUI which shouldn't be manipulated, and we're going to freeze them so that you can't accidentally move them around. And rather than just using freeze, I'm going to go to Object Properties and turn off Show Frozen in Grey so that they stay green, and then just choose freeze there. Okay, so now you can't accidentally select them. The only thing you can do is grab and move controls. And the final thing, let's bring the body back here. Set up a good view in perspective, but maybe with quite a long lens so you can see the whole of the face. It's important to see it in perspective because obviously that's how your brain works. And once you've got a view you like, just set up a camera on that view. Turn it into a free camera because we're going to lock it in place anyway. Just call it GUI-cam. And now if I whiz out and have a look, we've got a camera permanently looking at the head. Just link that to the head bone as well, like so. And then it just means that at any point in the animation, it doesn't matter where you are or what you're doing, if you go to GUI-cam, you've got a viewport with your animation in. So I can be animating in this viewport, say, and the GUI is completely visible there, and it just means I can edit the facial expression at any point and any time. I think that about covers facial rigs. Good luck.